Well, do pardon me, little coughing fit there. I've got George Jessop in the studio. I promised he would arrive, and he's here. He didn't quite make it when he was supposed to be here, but up he's come on the motorway in his trusty vehicle. George, how are you?
Oh, hello. I'm very well, thank you. It's lovely to be talking to you.
How's traffic?
Possibly unsurprisingly, very thin.
I'd imagine. Not a lot coming up, especially not this far north at this time. Did you M6 as far as Halton, was it? And then the A6. That's the best.
Ordinarily, I would have stopped at the services for a cup of tea and a pasty, but obviously now I can't, given these rather strange.
Of course, we are in lockdown, I should say, in case any historians of the future are listening to this and want an explanation for that statement. We are not allowed out of our houses at the moment, except essential business, which includes Mr. Jessup coming all the way up from London to talk to us once again about Peabody Browning, breaking quarantine.
Yes, no, it is absolutely essential work. I mean, as you know, nobody else is writing anything about Peabody and Browning, and I do sometimes feel that I'm sort of tilting at whims.
You keep on in there, George. You keep on in there, because we do get reaction to your appearances on this third time now, I think, and.
Yes,
we have had calls, I have to say, primarily from feminists who have a little frown there, I noticed, who have, don't worry, it's not as bad as you think, but I'd get your tin hat on if I were you. They've been investigating these Peabody and Browning people, and there's not a lot in it for women. Wouldn't get made these days, that's what they're saying. Women belittled, women speaking from the kitchen in disembodied voices, that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I think that's a justified complaint from one angle. As I think you probably are aware, I've been working on another book. Obviously,
good.
This isn't directly about them. This is this focuses on a Dutch guy who was there. He was script editor on one of the, in fact, an ill-fated film project towards the end of their careers.
Okay, so you've investigated these people that not many people know about. You've dug down in depth. You've branched off now to somebody that even fewer people would know about. You've written a book about it.
I have. Well, I have. I mean,
what's the name?
The name of the book?
Yeah.
The book is called There's Only Me and the Ampersand, which I
get that. That's because There's Only Me and the Sand. That was a catchphrase.
That's right. Well, that was Peabody's catchphrase.
That's a very good title.
Thank you. And actually, it's highly appropriate because PieterOudt, very interesting.
Just a minute. This is the script editor, and his name is Pieter Oudtt. Yes.
Yes, Dutch.
Okay, just to clarify. Okay.
Well, just to give you a little bit of context here, he, as a very, very young man, saw.
If you do have to cough, do you mind turning your head slightly away? Sorry about that. You know, sorry.
I'll try to remember next time. I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Well, he, as a very young man, he saw the I don't know whether you're aware that there was a sort of a Peabody family travelling show, which
that was the origins. That was when he realised he was funny.
Yeah, well, pretty much. I mean, that was. I mean, I don't know whether.
Maybe to put it that people laughed at him.
Yes, well, there was his famous Tricycle act, which he, as part of the family show, he would ride his tricycle around. Really, it was just a way of killing a bit of time.
It nearly killed him, didn't it?
Well, yes, because people would throw stuff.
Was that not the act? Was that not his challenge? Was you try to hit me with pieces of metal and I will duck and dodge?
Well, that wasn't the intention originally. I mean, he was very young. He was only maybe 6-7 years old. People would start by just sort of throwing their sandwiches or what have you at him because, you know, I mean, it's with the best will in the world. It's not the most entertaining thing in the world, is it, to see a small child ride a tricycle around in circles for you know, upwards of 15 minutes. and understandably, people did get a little frustrated.
Was that the act?
Well,
Just riding round.
Well, yes, but interestingly,
Just a minute. What was the? Were people supposed to marvel at this? Was the bicycle a new thing? Was it the balance?
No, it wasn't a new thing at all. I mean, it was a completely cynical bit of programming on the part of his father, who had control of this whole thing.
Was he allowed to collect the detritus and maybe try to flog it, maybe make a crust?
Well, I don't know. I mean, but I mean, you say crust. I mean, it just started off with a few frustrated people throwing food at him. One of the consequences of which was that it quickly became apparent that he was very, very nimble on this bicycle, and he was able to avoid these sandwiches. Anyway, before you knew it, people would be coming to the show just so that they could throw the food. So there would be sandwiches, raw meat, all sorts of stuff raining down on the stage, and he'd be darting and dodging in and out of this stuff.
Now, one day, some guy gets what they call a soda can over there and chucks it with some force.
Well, yeah, but before you knew it, there was pump handles being hurled down there, horseshoes.
Full soda can, I'm talking about.
Yeah, and he's ducking in and out all the stuff. He was never hit.
It's
extraordinary. Yes.
Did he in later life have any phobias that may have eradicated from that experience?
Peabody. Well, I mean, it's a bit hard to know where to start, really. But I mean,
I suppose any lumps of flying metal would have caused fear in him.
But then they would in anybody, wouldn't they?
Right. I admittedly, I leave the house. I'm not in. I'd have to see a lump of flying metal before I was aware of any fear of it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, it would bother me.
You have to be alert.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't have to be that alert. Well, I mean, this is a tale of woeful mismanagement. The whole of Peabody and Browning's career. I mean, especially ever since this character Wilbur Plum turned up and took over the managing duties.
Why we've never heard of them? Did he, in fact, cause a downturn in their burgeoning popularity?
Their star was waning when Plum turned up, but he had a bit of an eye on the counterculture in the United States in the 1960s and was able to repackage a load of their earlier stuff.
Yeah, drugs. Doesn't put it on that, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Plum, was he an evil? What do you say was evil?
Would I say he's evil?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I try not to make judgments like that. But I think the important point here is you were asking me about PieterOudt.
I was.
PieterOudt was a bit of a name in the counterculture. He edited.
Is he still alive?
Yes, he is. He edited some fairly radical magazines over there in San Francisco.
Well, he would, wouldn't he? He's Dutch.
But anyway, I mean, there's an interesting symmetry in all of this, in that he actually saw the Peabody family show with the Tricycle involved.
Have you met
him?
Yeah,
yes, I have. And I mean, one of the reasons that I'm so interested in him is that
I picture him little round John Lennon glasses and purple flared trousers. Am I right?
That's pretty much correct. Yeah. He's one of the very, very, very few reliable witnesses to Peabody and Browning, which is why I think that it's interesting to write about him.
Can I just a little doubt here? Purple loon flares, round glasses, long history of drug experience, and he's our reliable memory.
Well, yes, I mean it's.
I don't see a problem with that. How long is the book?
Well, it comes in at a slender and very readable 174 pages.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. You've not managed to bring a copy up for us. What's on the cover?
Well, it's actually a doodle that PieterOudt did himself.
Was that to while away the time in prison, or?
No. He was. I mean, he's a very creative person, and
always doodling.
Often doodling, writing, doodling. Peabody Browning spent some time in England under Plum's tutelage, so they'd an abortive attempt to work with Harold Pinter. They'd also hooked up.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yes, yeah. Well, Pinter was very taken with them. He saw a lot of symmetries between what they were doing and what he was doing, and
Well, there are there. I mean, there's a lot of pauses. It's grim and unfunny.
Just attempts for people to make sense of their lives through words and failing, and and drawing the humor out of the failure to do this.
Is Pinter funny then?
Well, I mean, some say.
I didn't realise that.
Well, it's not Mike and Bernie Winters funny. I mean,
not that good, obviously.
No. Well, anyway, I mean, and they also hooked up with in fact, another comedy double act called the Hernia Brothers. I think it's fair to say that Peabody and Browning's attempt to move their careers on in England was not a success. Plum realised he was running out of options, went for broke with a big money film project to be shot out in the desert I think it was in Nevada. I need to consult the book. But anyway, it's a strange business, hopelessly mismanaged. Depending on who you talk to, the film is about completely different things.
The oeuvre was called The Lost Supper. They wanted to make a film of it.
Well, it was a spoof on the idea of the Last Supper, and so
I get it. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, but anyway, I'd spoken previously to both Peabody and Browning whilst they were both still alive to try.
Did you not say Peabody was with us last time in Rill?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, he was. Yes, and he's still alive and kicking, very much with us, still happily living there in Rill with his new partner Wendy. So, would you like me to tell you about this film project?
Oh yes, we're getting off track now. I can't believe Peabody's still alive and living with Wendy.
So this film project, I mean, Plum managed to, through nefarious means, to attract some funding for this, which he needed to do because certainly, if you listen to Peabody, it was quite an ambitious undertaking involving space travel, time portals. So they
didn't have like green screen or computer. They'd have to have done it all. They'd have had to have made a spaceship, dressed up as aliens.
Yeah. All of that stuff. Yeah.
What was it actually about? Because that's just what Peabody thought.
Well, I mean, Peabody thought that it was some great religious allegory. Browning, of course, thought completely the opposite. He thought that it was a sort of down-home kitchen sink drama.
Yes, it's quite amusing. I see that. There's Browning acting his little heart out, and Peabody turns up with a cape and a silver band.
Yes, absolutely right. I mean, and to this day, I mean, the one thing that they seem able to agree on is that after those assembled have made their way through several courses of the most execrable food you can begin to imagine, made by Peabody as some kind of test for some reason.
It sounds good. I'm enjoying your description. It sounds like that Buñuel one.
Yeah.
The bourgeoisie.
Well, they've gathered there in the desert because they have it on some authority that there's gold buried underneath this shack. So it's a simulacrum of the Peabody place, the shack, the little shack that they live in. Certainly, in your imagination, you think, yes, I can see that this would look good on the screen. One of the problems was that, of course, Plum had no money and no managerial talent whatsoever. You know, they didn't have any film. The catering hadn't been sorted out.
Is that why there's no film of it?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, I've been very much reliant on what PieterOudt had to tell me, and as you've already suggested, his memory's a bit patchy, and he does tend to.
He does doodle.
Something that everybody has said was that Peabody was be hiding in a wardrobe for the big reveal, and wearing a purple cape and a glittery headband.
Oh, so I was right.
Yes. And at a key moment, he's supposed to leap out of the wardrobe in a sprightly fashion. Peabody must have told me that 3 or 4 times about the sprightly fashion. I'll leap out in sprightly fashion, he told. How old
would he have been then?
Oh, I think he would have been in his early 70s. He leaps out of this wardrobe onto the table in a puff of purple smoke and says, "I am the Lord of Time." But unfortunately, he never actually heard his cue. And then when he thought that he had heard his cue, he leapt out and everybody'd gone.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing. I'm sorry. I find it comical. I'm finding it comical.
And he had no idea. He was unable to tell anybody how long he'd been in that wardrobe for. Well, he rode freight trains back home to Baker, and he got back to find Browning happily snoozing in his cot. So I don't know how Browning got back. And what happened was that Plum was because Plum was a hopeless editor. He was absolutely hopeless, but he did it himself to try and save some money. But Plum was also lazy, and he absolutely hated doing it.
What was his major failing as a script editor?
Who, Plum?
Plum.
Oh, well, have you read any of the scripts? I mean, I don't think anybody would call the dialogue taut. Let's just leave it at that. Of course, the problem was that Oudtt didn't have any script editing experience, although he was very, very well versed in Peabody and Browning's work, and he was very, very tuned in to the expectations of the counterculture. And I've never ever heard of this happening anywhere else in the film industry. Plum insisted on paying him by the edited word.
I can see the logic there, though, that it's too unwieldy. We must make it more wieldy, and so we paying someone to get the rubbish out.
If you've got a 50,000 word script and you're going to pay your script editor to 20p for every word that he removes, and if you were cynical about it, you'd remove all 50,000 words, hand him back a blank piece of paper, and just ask for the money, wouldn't you?
Do you think Will Pinter worked in a similar fashion?
I mean, I suspect that he edited all of his own scripts, because I mean, Pinter was of course a writer, wasn't he? Which Plum.
He must have chucked an awful lot out though to end up with that.
Quite possibly. I don't think Plum's was a conventional setup. I mean, his sole interest was trying to make some money.
So hang on, can I ask you, you've got two conflicting views. Oudtt sort of susses a different angle. What did Plum think it was going to be? If you said, Mr. Plum, sell your film to us, what is it?
Well, I think that he'd tell you that there's something for everybody, that it's all singing, all dancing, that there's adventure, intrigue.
So lies, basically.
Well, as it turns out, I mean, he'd always been a big fan of Gene Roddenberry. I mean, to the point, in fact, that he had a restraining order placed upon him to stay away from Mr. Roddenberry. I mean, he seemed to have Peabody and Browning completely in his pocket, and for a little while, that actually seemed to work okay. They did gain some notoriety through
that. Would be when Mr. Oudtt, little teenage Mr. Oudtt, is sitting there smoking his spliffy doobie in his Amsterdam and listening to his little radio or his vinyl record and thinking this is good.
He doesn't remember, but certainly he does remember enough to give us a very sort of revealing peek into, you know, the working lives of Peabody and Browning. And
so they're on set, they're not in the shack, but they're in a caravan. Separate caravans, or
no, they
a shack.
They shared a caravan, which they complained about incredibly. Although interestingly, Peabody was asked if he wanted to go and move in with the Hernia brothers, and he did move in with the Hernia brothers, but he stayed for one night and never ever mentioned it again. Plum had done some sponsorship deal with a local beer company who basically gave them as much beer as they could drink, which turned out to be a terrible mistake. And they would insist on entertaining the cast and crew during the long periods where nothing much was happening with their amusing Cockney banter. They weren't just stuck there for a little while. They were there for, you know, the best part of 6 weeks.
Give us a denouement as we approach the end of our programme to the eventual demise of Mr. Pieter Oudtt, and how is he doing these days? Is he a personable chap?
Yes, he seems to be. I mean, he moved to Florida some years ago. He lives in a condominium there with his partner, Honeydew, and yes, as I say, he seems content enough, but his memory is not always his friend.
Yeah, thank you, George. Read the book. It's called Being the Ampersand.
Yes, well, that's Peabody's catchphrase from I Walked in the Garden, but of course, only me and the ampersand. PieterOudt, at Plum's instigation, invented the ampersand. I don't know whether you're aware of that. He picked up, reading through the script, how often the word "and" occurred, and berated.
Well, just now you just said 3.
Yeah, well, yes.
And if it looked like a doodle or a squiggle, it'd be perfect.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Yeah.
Truly unbelievable story, that. Well, have a nice drive, George. I hope it's been a pleasant one. I hope the feminists get in touch, or anybody. You don't have to be feminist to criticise Peabody and Browning. George, it's been a pleasure, as always. Buy the book, everybody.
Hey! What's the weather for the weekend gonna be?
Now today we had a big contrast in temperature across the UK, just 12 degrees over coastal parts of eastern England with cloudy skies, but in the sunshine in northwest Wales at RAF Mona, just up the road from Llanfair Pwllgwyn, Gallgo Gerech Windrobwll, Llantysilio Gogogoch, the temperature got to 21 Celsius at 17.